money paid to someone each year, typically for the rest of their life.
Okay, so annuities are things where not only are you earning compound interest, but folks, you are also investing or getting money back every period. Okay, so before, when we were dealing with Chapter 12 and we were talking about compound interest, we put the money in once and then we just left it there, right, and let it earn compound interest. The idea with an annuity is that you're going to invest money in this annuity and then something's going to happen every period, all right? So in an ordinary annuity, you invest at the end of each period, okay? And this is what differentiates questions from a Chapter 12 question from a Chapter 13 question, okay? Now, for right now in the class and on the homeworks, you guys don't have to worry about it because when you have a Chapter 12 question, it will be in Chapter 12. And when you have a Chapter 13 question, it will be in Chapter 13. On the test, the Chapter 12s and Chapter 13s will be mixed on the test, and you're going to have to know when is which, okay? So realize that all the Chapter 13 stuff has to happen every period, okay? All right, so that's what separates Chapter 13 from Chapter 12. Now, the first type of annuity, when we're dealing with Table 13-1, ordinary annuities, this is where you're investing money every period. These are the sorts of things like a 401k or an IRA, right? Some sort of an individual retirement account where you're putting money in, and the key here is that you're putting it in every period, all right? Now, our example last week talked about us putting in $4,000 at the end of each year for 4 years, and we figured out how to calculate this stuff when you invest at the end or when you invest at the beginning exactly. What I want to do today is figure out how to use the tables to calculate those same values, okay? All right, so use tables to find out how much is in our annuity that we invest has an E in it, I swear, invest $4,000 each year at, what was it, 6%? Is that what we did last time?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. At 6% compounded annually. All right, so another sort of key piece of this, folks, is that if it doesn't tell you what type of an annuity you have, if it doesn't say it's an ordinary annuity or an annuity due, you need to assume then that it will always be ordinary unless it states that it's an annuity due, or if it states that you invest at the beginning of every period, okay? All right, so the cool part about this, folks, is that the way that you use the tables to calculate this stuff is exactly the same as Chapter 12, okay? So all of those tools that we use to figure out what page to go to, what row to look on, and then just multiply by the principal value, all that stuff in Chapter 13 is exactly the same. That's how the tables are built. This is why we like to use the tables, because it makes the problem solving a little bit simpler, and we don't have to worry about dealing with exponential functions, which you should be happy about. All right? So, come on, there we go. All right, so first of all, since we're investing each period, that's what makes this a 13-1 type of investment, okay? We're investing money into this account every period or every year, and we want to know how much is going to be in it. That's what 13-1 calculates for us. Now, Normally what page we figure out is we say, okay, what percentage, right? Well, our percentage is 6%. If this were chapter 12, technically we would want to divide by something. What would we be dividing by here, folks? One, right? Because it's annually. So just the exact same technique we used in chapter 12, use it again in chapter 13, okay? So we're going to be on the 6% page, right? The row that we're going to look on, again, we're going to do it exactly the same way we did chapter 12. We're going to say, for 4 years, because that's what we did in the last problem. So we're going to do 4 years times 1 period per year. There's going to be 4 periods, just like we did back in chapter 12. And now we do exactly the same thing. You go to the tables. Brought my handy tables this time. We go to 6%. We go to row 4. Now we're using 13-1 amount of annuity. $4.3746. Again, just reading the table value straight off. That's exactly what we did back in chapter 12. Keep doing it in chapter 13. Now, the thing that we multiply by, folks, is just the amount that we invest every period. So we're just going to multiply by the $4,000. And according to the tables, how much money are we going to have in this account?
$174,984.
Means 17,000.
There was an eraser thing above the decimal, so I didn't see it.
Yeah, so just
$17,498.40.
and how did that compare to how much we said we were going to have exactly? $17,498.46. We were 6 pennies off, okay? So again, the table is a good approximation for calculating these values. That's the sort of thing that I'm going to be okay with in this particular class. And the nice part about it is the mechanics are essentially the same as chapter 12, okay? Now, how does it change when we start getting ordinary or annuity due instead of ordinary annuity? So, how do we adjust if the investment occurs at the beginning of each year? So the earlier problem we just worked a second ago, that was assuming we're investing at the end, because that's what ordinary means, right? Investing at the end of each period. When it's an annuity due, now we're investing at the beginning. It's still going to be using column 13-1, folks. We just have to do a slight shift, okay? So when you look back at our solution, when we did this thing exactly, when we compared, if you compare what you did exactly when you invest at the end versus invest at the beginning, what's the difference between the two of these solutions? What looked different? An extra period of interest, right? That was the one difference between these two tables, right? The numbers are almost all exactly the same. There was just that when you invest at the beginning, you get an extra period of interest, okay? So how, inside of these tables, do we get an extra period of interest?
Yeah, 1 period.
You add an extra period, okay? So Yeah.
Where are you going?
I gotta switch screens. All right, so we need an extra period, okay? We need an extra period to get extra interest from investing at the beginning, right? But the problem with adding an extra period is that also essentially adds an extra investment. Did we invest extra money in that new technique? No, we still invested just 4 times, right? So how do we fix that, folks? So when you add an extra period, this will actually add an extra investment. So how do we get rid of that extra investment? Yeah, just subtract it off, all right? To correct for the extra investment of another period, subtract it away after using the table. Okay? So these are the word descriptions for what we're going to have to do to correct when we invest at the beginning of every period, okay? So, here's how it works, right? So we're still using column 13-1. The page we're working on, am I going to change the page because of investing at the beginning? No. Okay, so we're still going to stay, in this case, 6% page. But now, here's where it's slightly different, right? So we're investing for 4 years. We want 4 periods. But now, because we want to get the extra period, add an extra 1, okay? So the red is what we're doing because we're investing at the beginning, okay? So, now, instead of looking at row 4, look at row 5 for your table, folks. 5.6371. Multiply by your $4,000, because that's how much you invested every period. So, how much would we have here? Now, this is for the 5th row, right? That's 5 periods. That means we invested 5 times. We only invested 4. So how do we get back to only investing 4 times? Subtract 4,000. So that's how you correct for having an annuity due, for when you invest at the beginning of the period instead of the end of the period, okay? And so we wind up having, in this account, $18,548.40. And how does that compare to our exact calculation? $18,548.37. We're actually closer. We're only 3 pennies off from the exact value, okay? So that's the idea to fix the tables when you're trying to find an annuity where you invest at the beginning instead of the end, all right? All right, so let's do a couple more of those using the table just so that we know exactly what we're doing when, all right? So let's suppose, all right, so I worked at Epic for 11 years. Alright? I invested $4,250 each quarter at the beginning of the quarter for 10 and a half of those years. So when I started working at Epic, they wouldn't let you invest in your 401k there until you'd worked there for 6 months. So for the first 6 months, first half of the year, I couldn't invest anything into my 401k. They wouldn't let us. All right. But then starting in the second half of my first year, I was like, woohoo! I can start investing. And so I did immediately, and that's how much I was putting in. Right. The account earned, let's suppose it earned 6% compounded quarterly. That's wishful thinking, folks, but it's sort of close. How much did I have when I quit? In other words, how much was in my 401k, or my account that I was investing with at Epic, when I finally quit working there? All right? So, one of the things that you guys need to be looking for when you are reading these sorts of problems where you're investing is this phrase. If you're investing at the beginning of each period, that's what makes it an annuity due. Okay? If it doesn't tell you when you're investing the money, it is assumed that you're investing at the end and that it's ordinary. Okay? So for us, since we're investing at the beginning, we're at an annuity due. All right? All right, so what page am I going to go to? Start at the percentage, 6%. What do I have to do with that 6%? Divide by 4 because it's compounding quarterly. Okay, so exactly what we did back in chapter 12, same thing here in chapter 13. Right? Now, how many periods do we have in this one? Or what row am I going to go to? Why 43?
Because 10.5 times 4 is 42, and then you add 1.
10 and a half years times 4 quarters per year, that's 42. But then remember, because it's annuity due, plus 1. So 43 periods of investment minus our correction at the end, right? Okay, so what's my table value? $59.7917. What am I going to do with that number? Multiply by the 4250 I put in every quarter, right? So, how much did I have? Anyone?
254. $114.73.
73 cents.
Rounded. 72 high.
Round correctly, yes. And then what do I have to do at the very end?
Minus.
Yeah, don't forget that since you're in the annuity due situation, you added an extra period, but I did not get to invest an extra period, so make sure that you don't forget to do the correction at the end, right? Subtract 1 investment from the end to get me back, so only investing 42 times instead of that fake 43. So 249, 8, 6, 473.
Yeah.
So I was just a hair shade of $250,000 in my epic 401k when I finally quit working there. Assuming that there was no 2007 crash of the stock market where you lost 40% of your investments in one day, which, yes, that happened to me while I had money sitting inside of it. Don't ask me how much money I lost. It's a gross thing to think about.
That's really depressing.
It was extremely depressing. One of the things that I will warn you about is that if you ever start investing, or if you have invested before, there are going to be times where you don't want to look, right? And that 2007, 2008 crash where I literally lost probably between $80,000 and $90,000, I didn't really want to see it, right? It was all fake money. I didn't know I had it anyways. It was just sitting in an investment account. In theory, earning compound interest for me. But it did disappear really fast.
It was an imaginary punch.
Yes, yeah, it's true. It imaginarily hurt a lot. The cool part about it was that, yeah, it went down 40%, but what happened the next 2 years? I earned 30% interest the next year after the crash. And the year after that, I earned 21% interest and actually made back all the money that I lost within 2 years. Okay? Now, I also didn't make any interest over those 2 years period, but at the same time, the money that I lost actually came back relatively quickly in the remarket correction after the crash. But it doesn't take long to add up, folks, right? Granted, you got to be able to make the hard sacrifice, right? That's like $1,400 a month, right? I mean, that's tough. You got to be able to make decent money in order to make that kind of a sacrifice. But once you start getting a job where you can do it early, not later, right? One of the things that my wife and I had to work around was that when we left Arizona to come to Wisconsin, we were both making like $10,000 a year. So we were poor, right?
Yeah.
I was by myself making way the hell more than that just by myself when we first got here. And so we made a conscious effort when we started making big money to immediately say, look, put as much away as possible because we knew how to live on almost nothing, right? And if you don't learn how to live with lots of money, then it's real easy to invest it and live on less, all right? Because you don't know, right? There's no concept of living on $80,000 a year if you've been living on 20 for 6 years, right? I mean, it's not too hard, right? But again, you have to make the choice and make the sacrifice, right? And this is the reward for the sacrifice, right? And this was 10 years ago, folks. What's this account been doing for the last 10 years? Still making interest for me, right? I'm not adding anything to it, but the compound interest is still happening. This is still growing, all right? This is the sort of thing that you want to be able to do. The younger you are that you can start, the way the hell better it's going to be for you when you start getting to mine and Greg's age, okay? Sorry, Greg.
You had to do it, didn't you?
I'm sorry, I can't resist.
Oh, you're not sorry.
Okay, well, you're welcome then. How's that?
It's better.
All right, so not too bad. All right, so let's try a slightly different one then. Let's suppose that, oops, I'm blue. Let's suppose that I invest, let's say, let's suppose I keep it relatively simple. Let's suppose I invest $100 each month. Into an account 6% compounded monthly. How much interest will I earn in 4 years? All right, so note, folks, this is a Chapter 13 problem because we're investing each month into an account and we want to know how much there will be in the future, okay? Note, does it say that I'm investing at the beginning? No. Therefore, you assume it's happening at the end, okay? So this is an ordinary annuity. And we're going to work with column 13-1, okay? Now, the only trick to this, of course, is that I asked for interest this time instead of the actual how much will I have thing. So there is a little bit of extra work to go, to do here, all right? All right, so what page am I going to go to? 0.5%. Why?
Because it's monthly, there's 12 months in a year.
6%. There are 12 months in a year, so divided by the 12, right? So however you're compounding, folks, that's what you divide by. So we're on the 0.5% page. What row am I going to go to? 48. Why 48?
4 times 12.
We're doing this for 4 years, and there are 12 months in a year. 48 periods. You've got the page, you've got the row, you know what column you're in. What's our table?
$54.0979.
0979. What do I do with that number? Multiply by 100, because that's what I'm putting away every month, right? $100 a month. $5,409.79. Remember, what does that number represent? Yeah, this is how much will be in the account, right, folks? What did I ask for? The interest. How do you figure out the interest?
Well, you subtract your principal with this, you would have to times by 12. Or no.
We need to subtract how much money we put into this account, folks. How much money did we put into it?
$100
$4,800. Why is that, Nick?
Periods and times 100.
48 periods. That means I'm investing 48 times, $100 each. I put $4,800 in there, subtract that off, okay? So on $100 a month for 4 years, you'll wind up earning $609.79. If you think about it in terms of investments, folks, right, you're putting away $100 a month. You basically earned 6 months worth of investment over 4 years, right? I mean, $600, that's you putting in $100 a month for 6 months, right? I mean, you basically got 6 free investments because you put into an account that was paying you 6%, all right? And this is 6% is the low end approximation for putting money into a retirement account, If you talk to a financial advisor, they'll tell you that most in IRAs or 401ks are earning somewhere between 6 and 8% compounded quarterly. So using 6% is a low approximation, all right? This is a safe one. This is this is something that we say, oh yeah, you're almost guaranteed to get that over a long period of time. So if you looked at it over 10 or some years, that's what they would assume is going to be the average, all right? So those are your ordinary annuities, 13-1. Not too bad? All right. So what is column 13-2's title, folks?
Present value of annuity.
Present value of an annuity. So if you think about chapter 12, what was present value for a compound interest account? Remember, when you're doing with 12.1, you're walking forwards. When you're dealing with 12.3, the present value, that's walking backwards, okay? So this is very similar to that, but it's got a bit of a twist, so bear with me, all right? This column is what you use when you are trying to determine how much money to invest now so you can collect an equal amount each period for however many years. So the key to working with column 13-2, folks, is that this is the only column where someone is getting money as opposed to investing money, okay? So these sorts of annuities are for annuities that are going to be paying out every period, all right? So, what's the classic example of this kind of an annuity? We just had two super huge ones that came up last week, right? Maybe it was 2 weeks ago.
Lottery.
The lottery, right? The lottery is the most classic example of a present value annuity. Lotteries are the classic example. So, the way I'm going to show you how to use column 13-2 is we are going to win the lottery as a class, okay? Sound good? You guys just remember that I'm a part of this, so I get to help with the winnings, right? All right, so we win how big do you want it to be, folks?
Let's do the one that just happened.
The 1.2 billion? That's insane. The numbers are just too crazy for that. Let's suppose that we win let's say a $200 million lottery. That's not quite disgusting, but it's still gross, all right? That is going to pay us, and so this is the way the lotteries are sold to you folks, right? When they tell you it's a $1.2 billion lottery or a $200 million lottery, that's the payout that you get if you take the annuity spread over a long period of time, okay? So if we win a $200 million lottery that's going to pay us, let's suppose it's going to pay us, let's see, we got to do this over 20 years, so let's suppose it pays us $10 million each half year for So times 2, that's 20, so for 10 years. So it's going to pay us $20 million a year over 10 years. So 20 times 10, that gets us to $200 million that we're going to get paid, right? But it's going to come in 20 $10 million chunks, right? And we have to wait every 6 months before we start collecting all of this, all right? Now, the Lottery Commission has an account that earns, let's suppose it earns, whatever, let's keep it simple to start with here. 6% compounded semi-annually. And note, this is exactly how the Lottery Commission actually does it, folks, is that the way they're going to pay you your annuity is they're going to take a certain amount of money, dump it into that account, and then guarantee you that that account will have enough money to pay you $10 million every half year for 10 years. And at the very end, when you make that last payment in the 10th year, there's no money left, okay? That's what they figure out the amount should be, all right? So, how much does the Lottery Commission invest into this account? So we, not you, we, because I'm getting some of this too. So we can collect our money. All right, so this is a very classic 13-2 example, okay, folks? The column is what you use so that you can figure out how much money you need up front so that you can get equal payments for a certain amount of time, okay? So, and note, this is one of the things that you have to do when you read the problems in Chapter 13, is kind of decide which of the 3 columns in Chapter 13 are you going to use, 13-1, 13-2, or 13-3. If someone is getting payments, folks, getting paid, 13-2, okay? Now, what page am I going to go to? Why 3%?
Semi-annually, so you divide by 2.
So all the mechanics that we were working with before, still the same, right? They never change. That's the nice part about all these columns in the first 5 columns of this table. What row am I going to go to? We're getting paid for 10 years, twice a year, 20 periods, right? You've got a column, you've got a page, you've got a row, you now have your table. Go get your table value, calculate the number, right? So 3%, 20th period, 13-2.
14.8775.
And again, what you multiply by is the amount that you're getting every period. Not the total amount over the entire annuity, but the amount you get every period. So how much are they paying us each half year?
10 million.
10 million bucks. So multiply that by 10 million. All right? So basically move the decimal 7 times. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 zeros at the end. So a $200 million lottery, folks, The Lottery Commission only needs this much money. And guess what this number also represents? When you win the lottery, what do most people do? What do? They take the buyout, right? They take the lump sum payment. Instead of taking the $10 million every half year for 10 years, they take the lump sum. Folks, this is the lump sum payment, okay? This is how much the Lottery Commission invests, and it is the lump sum buyout. So if you didn't want to wait for your money, folks, if you wanted to get it all right now, please note you do not get $200 million. Based on however the annuity tables work out, you will get a percentage of it, right? You're only going to get 148, a little bit under $149 million. And don't forget, what does the government do as soon as you get that winning?
Taxes.
Tax. There is a luxury tax on all lottery winnings that are higher than $1 million at 55%, folks. 55%. So more than half of this goes to the government immediately, right? And then in addition, that's just the federal government. The state government also takes a certain percentage. It's usually somewhere between 1% and 3% that the state takes. And the place that sold the ticket gets a certain percentage of that money as well, right? So again, all of this money keeps coming out of our pocket eventually. Usually what you can assume is that somewhere between 35 and 40% of this will how much you'll actually take home, right? After you pay all the taxes and all the fees and all the penalties and deal with all the lawyers who have to be called in to handle setting up ways to hide this money, etc. But still, I mean, if you think about it, what's 40% of this number, folks?
Still 59 million.
$59 million. Now, how many of us are in class today? See, 6 over here. How many are on the Janesville side?
7.
7 of you? Don't forget me.
I thought you counted yourself in here.
No, there's 6, 7, and 7. So there's 14 of us. Divide that number by 14. That's what every one of us gets.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So, you know, just a shade under 4 million or something like that. 4 1/4. Yeah, see? So it sounded like we were going to get a whole ton of money, but it's only going to wind up being $4 million, folks.
Yeah,
So.
whatever.
All right, but that's the idea behind these sorts of annuities, okay? When you're looking for present value, they're basically saying, how much do I need to put into an account so that I can get equal payments, all right? So here's another example of those. I slipped on a stairwell in Janesville. Guess what I did? I won a class action lawsuit that will pay me, let's see, how much did it pay me, folks? How painful was it?
How many flights of stairs?
If I broke I broke my ankle, folks, let's face it. And it wasn't just a break, it was a compound fracture, right? There was bone showing, it was gushing blood, it was really painful. I'm in serious pain, folks.
Compound interest for your compound fracture.
That's right, come on. This is why I'm getting compound interest. So it's gonna pay me, say, $4,000 per quarter for 10 years. The lawyer sets up an account that earns 8% compounded quarterly. How much must be put into this account? How much is needed in the account so I get my payments? So note, it sounds very similar to the type of questions that I asked back in chapter 12 about present value, where I said, how much do I need to invest now so that in 5 years I'll have $15,000 and can buy a new roof, okay? It's very similar, except now it's, how much do I need to invest now so that I can get $4,000 per quarter for the next 10 years, okay? That's how they're kind of the same, all right? That's why they're both called present value columns, all right? One's present value for an annuity, the other is present value for standard compound interest investing just once, all right? All right, so what page am I going to go to?
1.5?
What's my percent?
Interest?
8%.
Oh, it's 8%, I thought it was 6.
Yeah, I switched it up. We're compounding quarterly, so we're on the 2% page. What row am I going to go to?
40.
40, 10 years, 4 payments per year, 40 periods. And now, since it's a paying one, remember we're on column 13-2 still. So what's my table value?
27.3554.
27.35554?
Correct.
Okay. And what do I do with that number again?
Multiply it by 4,000.
Multiply by whatever I'm getting every quarter, right?
You're getting your squats in.
This smartboard's just a little bit lower than the average one.
Oh,
So when I write in the bottom, I actually have to get down a little bit in order
we get you like a stool. We get you a stool and a clock for this room.
to, so I can sit while I write. Oh, that would make it crazy. All right, how much?
Oh, that's right. That's 10,900. Wait, no, I screwed that up. I am drunk today. $109,421.50. I keep getting these little eraser things on my calculator, and it's blocking my decimals.
Okay, no problem. You just move the decimal point 1 over, so no problem. All right. So in other words, the account needs to have $109,429.60 so that I can take out that money every quarter. Note, folks, if I went to J.G. Wentworth and said, hey, can I sell you my annuity and get a cash upfront payment? Guess how much J.G. Wentworth would pay me for this annuity? $109,421.60 minus their 5 to 8% commission that they require on every sort of sale or purchase of an annuity that they have. All right? That's how J.G. Wentworth affords commercials between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. all night long.
Paid 7 cash now.
Yes, come on.
Kind of an aside, but I was always shocked my high school didn't get sued because there was a lot of injury stories. What happened to me was a kid set a soap dispenser on fire, but I didn't know. This is a very long and involved story. I'm just giving you my end of it.
Okay.
So I was walking through the hall to get to the main part of the building. I have pretty bad asthma, so
Okay.
the burning plastic sent me into an asthma attack.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm sitting there just coughing and wheezing in front of 6 teachers, and they just kind of sit there and just watch me. like
So
a
you gonna
fish
need
out of
that
water. No, another kid helped me to the nurse's office, but I was just like, I'm really glad the faculty here is willing to watch me die.
No, they were just watching you cough. It's a difference. There's a difference. All right, so anyways, folks, this is how these types of payout annuities work. It's all about figuring out how much you need to put in. And again, remember that this is the buyout, right? Now, here's a question for you. On all of these accounts, I can always ask you about interest, right? How much interest will I earn over the lifespan of this annuity? How much interest will I get if I take the annuity for 10 years? So remember, the $109,421.60, that's how much you put in, right?
Now you're just going back the other way.
How much do I get out? $109,421.60. How much am I going to get out of that account? What was the annuity, folks? What am I getting? What am I getting?
4,000 a quarter.
4,000 per quarter for
10 years.
10 years. How much is that?
160,000.
How'd you figure that out?
4,000 times 4 is
Well-
16,000 times 10 years is 160,000.
Money out. $4,000 per period, and there were 40 periods. So how much interest is it then? Take the difference, right? The difference between how much you put in and how much you take out, that is always interest, right? So a shade over $50,000 worth of interest, basically, guys, think about that. How many of those quarterly payments are going to wind up being interest payments, right? 12 of them, right? There's going to be a full year's worth of, that's 3 years worth of payments that are all basically just interest. How does that work? How do these things work, folks? So think about them, right? Okay, so think about how these are working, right? Whoever I sued is going to have to pay $109,421.60. They write a check and give it to the lawyer. The lawyer says, okay, this money goes into an account. You put that money in the account. What's that money going to do? It's going to make interest, right? So for the first 3 months, it's going to earn 8% interest. At the end of that 3 months, what do I get? $4,000. What happens the next 3 months? Same thing. The money that's left in the account earns a bunch of interest. I collect another $4,000. And so what happens is that the principal slowly diminishes over time, because in the very first 2 or 3 years of this account, I'll earn almost as much interest as I get paid. Pretty close. Right? But the principal will go down, and eventually, once you start getting to the end of the annuity, that's when basically I earn almost no interest, and I'm taking almost all of my principal out. But eventually, at the very end, that last quarter, when I get my $4,000, that's when all the money will be gone for the account, or most of it anyways, all right? That's how it works. So realize that there's still interest going on in here, folks. It's just that there's interest, and then you're taking the money out as opposed to the putting money in, okay? All right, now, one more example of these, right? And the reason why I use this example is because I lived in Arizona for 6 or 7 years while I was in graduate school. And Arizona is one of the most backward states in the entire country. But they instituted a policy right as I was leaving that I found to be amazingly forward, okay? What they did is they said, oh, if there's ever a couple that's getting divorced and has children, when they get divorced, they will, the court system will set up an annuity so that the child, whoever's taking care of the child, will always get child support every month, guaranteed until the child is 18. All right? They actually set it up so that it happens during divorce court, right? So here's an example, right? Couple is getting divorced. They have a 14-year-old daughter. Whoever gets custody will receive. So how much is child support nowadays, folks? Anybody got a rough idea? I have no clue. Like $800 a month? Sound reasonable?
Yeah, that's that one.
Okay. We'll receive $800 per month until she's 18 years old. There are now also provisions that whoever has custody or whoever's paying child support will also potentially have to pay for schooling past age 18, but I don't know any of those rules or laws, so this is the one that I know basically will happen, all right? If the court has an account that earns 6% compounded monthly, comma, how much will the child support need to make payments? So the idea here is that the court actually sets up an account that guarantees 6% compounded monthly interest. And the cool thing about it is that they actually passed a law in Arizona that stated if the account doesn't really earn 6% compounded monthly, that your taxes, the income taxes in the state of Arizona, will actually fund it until it does. Which was utterly insane for Arizona, right? They actually agreed to pay more taxes in a state that has Barry Goldwater as its, patron saint. I mean, he lived there until he, finally passed. But yeah, dude, they actually really care about their kids, which is really cool. So here's the question, right? How are we going to work this particular problem out, right? How much do they need to take off the top of the divorce settlement so that the kid's going to get their payments, all right? So again, since someone is getting payments, that's why it's 13-2. What page am I going to go to, folks? Half percent. Again, the nice part about the page is that you always go to the percent and then divide by however many you're compounding. 12. We're on the half percent page. What row? Why 48?
'Cause 4 years until the child's 18.
Uh-huh. 4 years, 12 months in a year. We need 48 periods, 48 payments of $800 a month. We now have column, page, row. What's my table value? Somebody half percent 48, 13-2? 504?
No, 5804.
5804, there you
Sorry.
go. I missed the 8. Multiply by the 800 bucks. So how much are they going to take off the top of the divorce settlement before they even start splitting the assets between the two individuals? $34,064.32. So before either of those two people that are getting divorced, and it doesn't matter who it is, they're going to take that much money, put it off to the side, put it into account. And again, after the divorce court is done and they go through all the child custody state, whoever gets the custody of the child gets this money, right? So if it's one of the parents, great. If it's the grandparents, great. If it's the state and they go into an orphanage or they go into a, some sort of a foster care system, that's where the money goes. Guaranteed. Absolutely blew my mind that Arizona was that forward thinking. Very cool at the same time. So again, all of these types of problems, someone's getting some kind of a payment and you need to figure out how much up front so that you can do it. All right? All right, so last column, folks. What's 13-3?
Sinking fund value.
Sinking fund. Sounds like a really good fund, eh? Why would anybody call an annuity a sinking fund? Because you sink money into it. That's absolutely right. The idea is that, this is what you use if you are investing for a purchase and you're going to invest every period. All right? So this column answers the question, how much do you need to invest each period to reach a goal in the future?
This is just more specific.
Yeah, this, folks, is actually exactly what 12-3 was back in Chapter 12, okay? Back in Chapter 12 when we did the 12-3 column and we figured out how to walk backwards, right? This is the exact same column, except now instead of investing once, we're investing every period. Same as 12-3, but invest each period. So, you guys still have your notes from Chapter 12 somewhere? What was the example we did for 12-3 back in Chapter 12? We were investing to buy something like a car or a roof or something like that.
Or the lower you invest part. Which one was the example? I have a lot of examples.
It's how much do you need to invest to reach a goal? Like how much do you invest to buy a car 4 years from now or something like that, right? Thought we did roof, but that may have been a different.
I think we did that one. See back
Anybody got it somewhere?
The roof one?
Yeah.
Oh, I need $5,000 in 5 years. Was that one?
Sounds right, yeah.
I need $5,000 in 5 years. I have an account that pays 4% compounded quarterly.
Okay. So I need $5,000 in 5 years. How much do I need to invest each quarter into an account that earns 4% compounded quarterly? reach my goal. So for some reason I need $5,000, folks. Probably do new water heater with an Aprilaero system and a nice, cleansing filter that goes around in the system. My wife has one of those mold allergies, mold and dust allergies. So if we don't have one of those filters, really fancy filters in our furnace, then she's always sick during the winter. So add an extra, $2,000 into your furnace purchase when you do it. And of course we had to have an Aprilaero system because you need to have it have a certain amount of moisture so that there's the right, right amount of water in the system as you're sleeping so that you don't get a cold on top of it, etc., etc. I just said yes and wrote the check. So, how much do I have to invest every quarter into this account so that in 5 years I wind up having $5,000? Okay? So note, this is almost exactly the same as that problem we did back in 12-3. The only difference, right there. Those two problems are almost identical, except one of them you invest once, the other one you invest every period. Okay? All right, so this is column 13-3. What page am I going to go to, though? 1%, because the mechanics are all the same, right? What row am I going to go to?
20.
Row 20, because again, 5 years, 4 quarters per year, so I've got 20 periods. What's my table value? So last column.
0.0454.
0454 sounds about right. Guess what I multiply that number by?
Reline these things. I'm so blind.
$5,000. That's how much I need in the end. So how much am I going to invest every quarter for this? $227. It's not. To get $5,000 in granted we're going to do it in 5 years, right? But $227 per quarter, right? That's per quarter. How much is that per month?
$75.67.
Yeah, so
Yep.
basically $75, right? So $75 a month. If you guys save $75 a month, every month for 5 years, you're going to have basically $5,000 as long as you're earning 4%. Same kind of concept, okay? And again, this is why you should invest to buy things instead of borrow to buy things, right? Because when you're investing to buy things, you're going to be earning interest while you're investing. Whereas when you borrow to buy things,
The other guy's getting interest.
yeah, somebody else is getting the interest and it sure as hell isn't you, okay? So, all right, let's do one more of those, and this time I'm going to ask interest. Let's see. Oh, let's do this one. All right, so I need a new roof in, let's say, 7 years. How much do I need to invest each half year I have an account that earns 5% compounded semi-annually. Buy a $21,000 roof. So when I got a new roof, probably 18 some years ago, it cost me 16 grand. I'm assuming that there's been some inflation since then, and that 25 years later is going to wind up costing me like 21 grand in order to get that new roof. And since it's been 18 years, I know I need a new roof in 7 years, I should start investing to get it, right? And let's assume that I have this 5% compounded semi-annually account somewhere. Don't ask me where, because if I did, I would be using it a lot more than I pretend to. Because 5% is a really nice interest rate right now nowadays, folks. So, I am investing to reach a goal. That's what column 13-3 answers. I'm investing to reach a goal every period. All right? Column 13-3. Invest each period to reach a goal. Right, that's what 13-3 is for. Again, the mechanics are all the same. So what page am I going to go to? 2.5. Because it's a 5% account. It's compounded semi-annually twice a year. I'm on the 2.5% page. What row am I going to go to? 7 years, twice a year, 14 periods. What's my table value? .0605. Multiply by the $21,000 I'm going to need for my new roof. How much do I need to invest every half year?
$1,270.50.
$1,270.50. Yeah, that's $200 a month. That's probably not too far from the truth, right? Now, my question to you is, how much interest will I earn? How much interest will I earn to pay for my roof? Remember, I can always ask interest about any one of these types of questions, so you have to know how to calculate interest. And remember, interest is always the difference between how much you take out and how much you put in. And your job is to just tell me, what are those two numbers? All right? So for this problem, how much am I taking out? How much money am I going to take out of this account? 21,000, right? Because that's how much I need for a new roof, right? How much money am I going to put in? 1270.50.
Times 14.
Why times 14?
That's how many periods.
That's how many periods. Okay, good. 1270.50 times the 14 periods. How much am I actually going to put into this account? $787. Smartboard getting all wonky on me here. $17,787. Okay. So what's the interest? The difference. $3,213 of that $21,000 is going to be straight interest. And if you play your cards right and build the account the correct way, you won't have to pay any tax on any of that interest. Gotta hide it smartly though. Alright? Alright, so how are we doing? When are we done? I got like 5 more minutes, right?
No.
Okay. I want to do one last question.
There's no time.
There's one last question. This is the best question of them all. Okay. So, Ryan, how old are you?
18.
All right. Ryan is 18 years old. All right. Ryan, when do you want to retire?
When I'm 55.
Okay. Ryan will retire at age 55. Now, when you retire, you will obviously not be working anymore, right? So, how much money are you going to need to live each year while you're retired?
Probably a solid couple million.
Per year?
Oh, per year?
Yeah, per year.
Done until you die.
Couple 100,000.
How about we say 150,000? Is
That
that okay? Okay. Ryan will need
living lavishly.
$150,000 per year during his retirement. All right, now, here's a sad question for you though, Ryan. When do you expire?
When I am 85.
85? Okay. Ryan will expire at age 85. Okay.
Now I just changed
If you just die at age 30, you won't have to do this problem.
So the question that I have is, how much does Ryan need to invest every year so that he can do his goal, right? How much does Ryan need to invest while working to do this? Now, when you invest, Ryan, are you going to invest aggressively, mediocrely, or safely?
Let's do a mediocre.
Okay. Ryan
Always shoot for the middle.
Yeah.
expects, put the pen down, to earn 7% compounded annually. So if you'd have said that you were going to invest aggressively, I would have said 8%. If you'd have said safe, I would have said 6%. Generally, those are the percentages that we assume you will average in your retirement accounts throughout your entire lifespan, right? Sometimes you'll earn less, sometimes you'll earn more, but on average, it'll be somewhere between 6 and 8, all right? So, folks, this is a 2-part problem, okay? The 2 parts that you have to get are, 1, how much money does he need to get his payments? And then 2, how much does he need to invest to get to that number, okay? Retirement is a 2-part problem. Step 1, how much needed to get payments. And then step 2, how much to invest to reach goal. All right, so step 1, how much do you need to get payments? What column do we use to determine how much you need to get payments? All right, good. And what column do we use to determine how much we need to invest to reach a goal? 13-3. All right, so all we have to do is figure out where on the tables to find these numbers, okay? So, step 1. Column 13-2. What page are we going to go to for this one, folks?
7%.
7%, because it's compounded annually. All right, now here's the slightly tricky part. What row are we going to go to? Remember, folks, he's getting payments. When do you get payments out of your retirement account? When you're retired. When do you stop getting payments out of your retirement account?
When you die.
When you expire, right? Say it nice, right? No death here,
When
just
you
expert.
fight it.
So how many years does Ryan need to pay himself?
30.
30, right? From age 55 to 85, he's going to pay himself 150 grand, right? 30 years. 85 minus 55, all right? So we have the column, we have the page, we have the row. We can now figure out your magic number, Ryan. We know what it is, all right? So what's the table value? 7%, row 30, column 13-2. Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll be here forever.
I'm sleeping. I'm sorry, I'm going as fast as I can.
Anybody else can step up.
There's literally never been more pressure.
12.4090.
Thank you.
4090.
Yeah.
Okay. Multiply by that by however much Ryan needs per year. Is 150 grand. Which is not, that's not an exorbitant amount of money, by the way, Ryan. You should expect that, honestly. This is a very reasonable kind of thing. 200,000 would have been going exorbitant. Yeah, maybe a little much, but not necessarily.
Too lavish.
Not necessarily. I mean, you know, you assume inflation, right? I mean, come on. All right, so how much does Ryan need, folks?
1,861,350.
So that's your goal, Ryan. That's your magic number, right? 1.861 some million bucks, right? So now we have the number you need to reach, right? And this is cool, right? Because this is a, in theory, very real number that you could try and get to, right? All right, so the question then is, how do we get there? That's step 2. So now we're working off column 13-3 because we're trying to invest to reach a goal, and we're going to invest every year, right? What page are we going to go to?
7%.
7%, because we're assuming we're going to earn the same interest throughout his entire life. Not necessarily a true assumption, but whatever. What row do I got to go to?
37.
Why 37?
Because 18, he wants to retire at 55, so you minus it. 55 minus 18.
55 minus 18, he's going to be investing into his retirement account for 37 years, okay? And this is going to be how much you're going to need to invest per year, right? So, 7%, row 37, folks. What's my number?
Of 0.0062.
0.0062 multiplied by that magic number of a million whatever. 1,861,350. What does Ryan need to invest each year?
$11,540.37.
That's actually not that bad.
And if you think about it, that's per year. Divide that by 12. How much does he need to invest per month? Just a shade under $1,000, right? Think about that, right? I mean, how much are you saving each year? 11.5. How much are you collecting every year? 150. That's how compound interest works over a long period of time, folks.
Man, this is the beans right here.
Hell yeah, that's absolutely right, right? I mean, granted, this is assuming that you can afford to throw away $1,000 a month every month for the rest of your working life, which maybe that's pushing a little bit. But the idea is that at some point in time, maybe you can't do it right now, but if you start small, start with $50, $20 even, and get yourself rolling, once you start making money, and you can double it, triple it, quadruple it, just totally doable. Absolutely. All right? And note, folks, this problem that we just did is essentially what the extra credit project is on Blackboard. This exact problem. Figure out for yourself how you plan on retiring, okay? And you do have to answer some morbid question, folks, like when you're going to stop collecting your retirement. But these are the sorts of things you try planning on, all right? And this is a good exercise to play around with, and you can even play around with the interest rates to figure out how the number goes up and down, and change how much money you need every year to a more reasonable or a more lavish number to see if it's something that you can pull off, right? Play around with it, see what you can do, and see what is available for you for the rest of your lives. And so you can retire early, because that's the goal, right? All right, so note, that's the end of chapter 13. So if you don't mind, don't forget to work on the homework. 2 through, it's only like up to 28 or something like that, right? I think it only goes up to 28 or 26 or something like that. It's not that many this time around, right? They keep getting smaller and smaller the more problems that we get, so. This one 28, I think it's 28. It might be 30.
Crap.
So the idea, folks, is that Tuesday next week will be our next test over chapters 10, 12, and 13. Please be ready. So Thursday will be review. Tuesday next week, test. All righty? Oh, turn off.
We go now?
No, you have to stay around forever, Greg.